Good afternoon and welcome to the National Press Club of Australia here in Canberra. We meet today on the lands of the Ngunnawal and the Ngambri people. My name is Tim Shaw. I'm a director and board member of the club. Before we start proceedings today, I'd like to invite the Vice President of the National Press Club of Australia, Andrew Tillett, to make a statement.
Thanks, Tim. I'm Andrew Tillett, the Vice President of the National Press Club, and it is with sadness today that I advise that the club's inaugural president and life member, Tony Eggleton AO, has died aged 91. Tony was a founding member of the National Press Club in 1964, and in 1962, 1964 when he was president, and in his early career as a journalist. In his rich life as a journalist, he was in his rich life, he was a journalist, a press secretary and confidant to a number of Liberal leaders and Prime Ministers, including Prime Minister Harold Holt and John Gorton. And in 2002, he became chairman of the C.E.W. Bean Foundation, named after Australia's best-known war correspondent and military historian. But perhaps his best-known role was federal director of the Liberal Party, a post he held for 15 years. Last year, the club was honoured to launch his biography by Tom Frame, A Very Proper Man, The Life of Tony Eggleton. Vale Tony Eggleton AO, and please join with me for a brief moment of reflection. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Andrew. Today, our guests at the National Press Club, Stella Assange, lawyer, human rights defender, and Jennifer Robinson, Australian human rights lawyer and barrister, for Stella to make her first address to the National Press Club of Australia. Stella grew up in Botswana, Lesotho, Sweden and Spain. She moved to the United Kingdom to study politics and law at SAOAS and Oxford University LMH. Stella worked in East Timor, in Botswana, before joining Julian Assange's international legal team in London in 2011. Stella formed an integral part of Julian Assange's legal team since his years of confinement in the Ecuadorian embassy, where her fluency in Spanish and Swedish proved most valuable. Stella and Julian have two children together, born in 2017 and 2019. They married in March 2022 in Belmarsh High Security Prison in southeast London. We're also joined today by Julian's father, John, and by Julian's brother, Gabriel. Jennifer Robinson has been instructed in domestic and international cases involving media law, public law and international law. She advises media organisations, journalists, whistleblowers and high-profile individuals on all aspects of media law and reputation management. And she's also been instructed in human rights-related judicial review cases and has given expert evidence in Parliament and at the United Nations. You can follow today's conversation on Twitter at PressClubAUST or hashtag NPC. Will you please warmly welcome Stella Assange.
Thanks, Tim. It is a great pleasure to join you here today. I would like to thank the National Press Club for inviting me to speak here with you. Since I touched down in Sydney, I have been greeted with enormous warmth, and although it is my first time coming to Australia, I do not feel like a stranger to these shores. Julian's stories have acquired a sharper resolution in my mind, and I can better understand why he misses home so much. The truth is that I have mixed emotions about being here, because I had always imagined my first visit to be with Julian and the children. I could not bring them because I am here to speak to you today, and I am at the rally on Wednesday in Sydney before I returned to London. My visit here was originally prompted by the official visit of President Biden and the Quad Summit. After it was cancelled, I decided to come anyway. I did not want to lose the opportunity to speak to you, because we are now in the end game. Julian needs his freedom urgently, and Australia plays a crucial role in securing his release. I recognize many faces in the room today who have played a crucial role in the fight for the freedom of my husband. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Australian parliamentary friends of Julian Assange, who have created a political environment in which support for Julian goes beyond party political affiliation. The show of unity has made it possible for the leadership to take a position. I wish to thank the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, as well as the Leader of the Opposition, Peter Dutton, for putting that position on the record, that Julian should be released so that he can come home, home to his family, home to Australia. I want to thank the Australian press for keeping Julian's case alive in the minds of the Australian public. But above all, I would like to thank the overwhelming dedication of the Australian people, who have brought about a sea change in awareness and solidarity for Julian's plight. This unity in support for my husband is a source of enormous encouragement for our family. It nurtures Julian's ability to continue on. The reality is that to regain his freedom, Julian needs the support of his home country. This is a political case, and it needs a political solution. I am often asked what Julian's day-to-day is like and what we talk about. Yes, we spend time talking about the intricacies of the legal arguments or the political developments that influence the case. But most of the time, we talk about the past and about our future together. His past is here. He tells our children how he would catch yabbies and go fishing for flathead and blackfish in the Sandon River with his grandfather, Warren, or how he reared a fledgling rainbow lorikeet when he lived on Magnetic Island when he was 13. He fed the lorikeet on mangoes until it was strong enough to rejoin the wild. He tells the children about Tilly, the chestnut-coated mare which he would ride when he stayed in the northern rivers, or how he surfed in Byron Bay as a teenager. He tells them about his beekeeping in the Dandenong Ranges in Victoria. That's how I imagine Julian when he is free, not behind the cold blue glare of a computer screen, but cycling through Melbourne like he used to do, or feeling his bare feet sink into the cool sand like I did yesterday on Bondi Beach. Today, Julian's feet only ever feel the hard, dull, even cement on the prison floor. When he goes to the yard for exercise, there is no grass, no sand, just the bitumen pavement surrounded by cameras and layers of razor wire overhead. I can tell you exactly what Julian is doing right now. It is 3 a.m. in London. Julian is lying in his cell, probably awake, trying to fall asleep. It's where he spends 22 hours a day, every day. Julian's cell is about 3 by 2 meters. He uses some of his books to block out the unpleasant draft coming from the window in the cold winter nights. There are pictures on the walls, pictures of our children, pictures of us together. A large, colorful poster of a nebula taken by NASA's James Webb Telescope. a chart showing the distance between London and European cities, so that he can make the distance to Brussels, Vienna, and Lisbon, pacing up and down the length of his cell. He has worn out 2 pairs of sneakers, walking the European continent in his cell. He reads to keep his mind busy, to fight the crushing sense of isolation and of time wasting away. He has spent 1,502 days in this prison cell, with no end in sight and no way of knowing how many days to count down to his release. Julian will be in that cell indefinitely, unless he's released. If Julian is extradited, he will be buried in the deepest, darkest hole of the US prison system, isolated forever. That is what is done to defendants in so-called national security cases, even before trial. A 175-year sentence is a living death sentence, a prospect so desperate that the English court found that it would drive him to take his own life rather than live forever in hell. We must do everything we can to ensure that Julian never, ever sets foot in a US prison. Extradition in this case is a matter of life and death. Julian counts the days until our next visit. When the children and I get to Belmarsh, usually on a weekend, we leave our belongings in a locker. We check in with the prison authorities in the visitors center building. My fingerprint is scanned, and we get a stamp on the back of our hands. Then we head to the entrance of His Majesty's prison, Belmarsh. The only thing we are allowed to have in our hands is a VO, or a visitor's order. It lists the people who are authorized to visit Julian on that day. We stand in endless queues. Max, who recently turned 4, used to call the prison the queue. When are we seeing Daddy in the queue, Mama? Now he is coming to better understand what a prison is, but not quite. When I travel, like now, he asks me, "When are you back from work prison, Mama?" Gabriel, who just turned 6, knows it's a prison. Prisons feature in his dreams and in his nightmares. I tell him his father is no ordinary prisoner. He is a hero, and millions of people around the world want him to come back to us. My fingerprints are scanned 3 times more as we make our way through the airlocks. After the first airlock, our shoes and jackets are put through an X-ray machine. A prison officer scans us each in turn with a magnetic wand, front and back and under our feet. Then a second prison officer pats us down, front and back, under our feet again. They check our hair, inside our mouths, behind our ears. Then we go to the second airlock, which lets us out onto a cement yard. We cross the yard and queue up once more to get into the interior building and a third airlock, after which we are let through to the dog search. We stand on a square. The children are told to stand still and be quiet while the dog jumps up to sniff us, front and back. Then finally, we are let through to the large visitor hall where Julian is sitting at one of 40 tables. Julian sits on a red chair, opposite 3 blue chairs. A heavy table is in between us. The children race to him, shrieking gleefully, while the prison officer complains that the children should remain quietly by my side until my fingerprint is scanned once more. At the table, Julian and I are allowed to embrace hello and goodbye. We are allowed to hold each other's hands across the table. The children climb on him, and he reads them stories. All our children's memories with their father are in this one large echoey visitors' hall, with the one exception of our wedding last year, which took place in a bare room in a different building inside the prison. For an hour and a half, once or twice a week, we are together as a family. There is now near universal recognition of the enormous implications that this case has for press freedom and the future of democracy. For most people, Julian is a symbol of staggering injustice, because he is in prison on trumped-up charges for exposing the crimes of others. A symbol because he faces a bewildering 175-year sentence for publishing the truth. A symbol of a sophisticated form of state violence dressed up in complexity and indirection that not even Franz Kafka could have imagined. For the press and the public, Julian's case is the most brutal attack on press freedom that the Western world has seen in the last 70 years. A foreign government is using the political offenses in its statute books to indict a foreign national abroad because of what he or she published in a different country. Accurate, damning publications exposing their war crimes. If sovereignty is to mean anything, if jurisdiction is a proper legal and political reality, the case against Julian cannot be understood as anything other than an absurdity, a stupefying decision of egregious overreach. The case is the worst and most enduring legacy of the Trump administration. It is not just outlandish, but extremely pernicious. Julian is being used as a deterrent to bully journalists into submission. The case against him sends the message that each of you in this room are fair game. It is a show of contempt for democratic accountability and of the rights of victims of government wrongdoing. For all the talk of press freedom as necessary in a democratic society, the case against Julian provides a gaping hole through which any country can legitimize the imprisonment of journalists and dissidents, including other Australian journalists. And use it, they do. Russia's charges against Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich mirror the charges the US has brought against Julian. Russia had not used the Espionage Act against a foreign journalist since 1987. For almost 40 years, Russia had expelled foreign journalists, but now it puts them on trial for espionage. America's case against Julian has created a new race to the bottom, a new normal, which makes it easier to get away with imprisoning journalists. Enough is enough. There is no time left to lose. Julian needs to come home to us, home to all of us. Please help bring us back together. Thank you.